Picture this. You're standing on a beautiful beach at sunset, waves crashing peacefully against the shore. The perfect vacation spot. But what if I told you that some of the most terrifying events in human history happened in places just like this? Beach houses that were supposed to be paradise turned into living nightmares. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 true stories that will make you think twice about that next beach vacation. Stories so disturbing, so absolutely terrifying, that they'll stick with you long after this video ends. But before we dive into these bone-chilling tales, I need to warn you, these aren't just stories. These are real events that happened to real people. People who thought they were safe. People who thought they were just enjoying a peaceful getaway by the ocean. So dim the lights, lock your doors, and prepare yourself for 5 true horrifying beach house horror stories that will haunt your dreams. On August 12th, 2019, the Rodriguez family rented what seemed like the perfect beach house in Malibu, California. The listing showed pristine white walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and a private stretch of beach. It looked like paradise. Maria Rodriguez had been planning this family reunion for months. Her elderly parents, her 3 children, and her husband Carlos were all going to spend a week reconnecting and enjoying the California coast. But what started as a dream vacation quickly became their worst nightmare. On their second night, Maria woke up to the sound of footsteps above them. Heavy, deliberate footsteps pacing back and forth across the ceiling. She shook Carlos awake. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Carlos listened. The footsteps continued. Back and forth. Back and forth. But here's the thing that made Maria's blood run cold. This was a single-story beach house. There was no second floor. Carlos grabbed a flashlight and checked outside. No one was on the roof. No tree branches. Nothing that could explain the sound. Yet the footsteps continued throughout the night, always directly above wherever the family happened to be sleeping. The next morning, they asked the property manager about it. He went pale and claimed he had no idea what they were talking about. But Maria noticed something in his eyes. Fear. On the 3rd night, things got worse. Much worse. Maria's 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, started screaming at 2 a.m. When they rushed to her room, she was pointing at the window that faced the ocean. "There's a man standing in the water," she sobbed. "He's just standing there, staring at our house." Carlos looked out. The beach was empty. Just moonlight dancing on the waves. But Sophia wouldn't stop crying. "He's still there, Daddy. He's still looking at us." That's when Maria noticed something that made her heart stop. Wet footprints leading from the window, across the bedroom floor, and stopping right next to Sophia's bed. The family packed their bags that very night and left. But as they drove away, Maria looked back one last time. There, standing in the 2nd-story window of what was supposed to be a single-story house, was the silhouette of a man watching them leave. Later investigation revealed that the previous owner had committed suicide in that exact spot, jumping from a 2nd floor that was demolished years ago. The current owners had rebuilt the house as a single story, but apparently, some things don't stay buried. The Rodriguez family never spoke about their beach house experience again. Some trauma is too deep to share. In July 2020, college friends Jake, Michael, and Danny rented a beach house in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. They were celebrating their graduation, looking forward to a week of surfing, drinking, and freedom before starting their careers. The house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a hot tub, and direct beach access. But there was something the rental company forgot to mention in the listing. On their first night, Danny woke up to find all the kitchen cabinets wide open, every single one. He assumed one of his friends was playing a prank and closed them all before going back to bed. The next morning, Jake found every single kitchen cabinet open again. This time, all the dishes were stacked in perfect pyramids on the counter. "Very funny, guys," Jake said over breakfast, but both Michael and Danny swore they hadn't touched anything. That night, they decided to stay up and catch whoever was doing this. They set up their phones to record the kitchen and took turns keeping watch. At exactly 3:17 a.m., all three boys heard the cabinets opening, one by one, slowly, methodically. But when they rushed to the kitchen, no one was there. Just the cabinets, standing wide open, exactly like before. But this time, there was something different. Something that made all three friends want to run. Written in the steam on the kitchen window were the words, "Get out." They tried to rationalize it. Maybe the previous renters had written it, and the steam made it visible. But the house had been professionally cleaned, and the writing was fresh. On the fourth night, things escalated. Michael woke up to find his bedroom door open. He always slept with it closed. As he got up to shut it, he heard whispering coming from the beach. Multiple voices, all speaking at once, but he couldn't make out the words. He looked out his window. The beach was empty, but the whispering continued. It seemed to be coming from directly below his room. That's when he realized something horrifying. The whispering wasn't coming from the beach. It was coming from underneath the house. Michael grabbed a flashlight and went outside to investigate. Under the beach house, in the crawl space between the sand and the floor, he found something that still gives him nightmares. Dozens of names carved into the wooden support beams. Names and dates going back decades. But what made his blood freeze was the most recent carving. Jake, Michael, Danny, July 2020. Their names, carved in wood that looked like it had been there for years. The three friends packed their car in the middle of the night and drove straight home. But 6 months later, Michael received a phone call from the Outer Banks Police Department. The beach house had burned down in a mysterious fire. When investigators searched the remains, they found something disturbing in the crawl space. A collection of personal items from dozens of previous renters, spanning 20 years. Items that had never been reported missing. Items that suggested someone had been watching, collecting, and planning for a very long time. The case remains open. The arsonist was never caught, and Michael still receives anonymous phone calls where the only sound is whispered voices, just like that night under the beach house. Sarah Chen thought she was getting the deal of a lifetime when she found a beach house rental in a remote part of coastal Maine for just $50 a night. The photos showed a charming cottage perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Perfect for a writer looking for inspiration and solitude. What the photos didn't show was that the nearest neighbor was 12 miles away, and the house had no cell phone service. Sarah arrived on a foggy October evening in 2021. The isolation was exactly what she wanted. Just her laptop, and the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. The first 2 days were perfect. She wrote more than she had in months, inspired by the raw beauty of the Maine coast. But on the third night, she discovered she wasn't as alone as she thought. She was working late when she heard a car door slam outside. Sarah looked through the window but saw nothing except fog so thick she could barely see 10 feet. Then she heard footsteps on the gravel driveway. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the house. Sarah's heart started racing. She grabbed the landline phone, but the line was dead. She tried to convince herself it was just an animal, maybe a deer. But animals don't knock on doors. 3 slow, heavy knocks on the front door. Then silence. Sarah waited, barely breathing. After 20 minutes, she crept to the window and peered out. Nothing but fog. But when she turned around, she nearly screamed. Muddy footprints led from the front door, across the living room, and disappeared into the kitchen. Someone had been inside while she was looking out the window. Sarah grabbed a kitchen knife and searched every room, every closet, every possible hiding spot. The house was empty, but the footprints were real. She barricaded herself in the bedroom and didn't sleep a wink. The next night, it happened again. Car door, footsteps, knocking. This time, Sarah was ready. She had positioned herself where she could see both the front and back doors. No one could enter without her seeing them. But when the knocking stopped, she found wet footprints in the hallway leading to her bedroom door. On the 5th night, Sarah decided to leave. She packed her bags and waited until dawn to make the drive back to civilization. But as she was loading her car, she made a discovery that explained everything and made it so much worse. Hidden in the fog, parked about 50 yards away, was an old pickup truck, and sitting in the driver's seat was a man watching her through binoculars. When he realized she had spotted him, he started the engine and drove away, but not before Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. The truck's license plate was covered in mud, except for one visible number, the same number as the house address she had been staying at. Sarah drove straight to the police station in the nearest town. What she learned there still gives her nightmares. The beach house had been owned by a man named Walter Grimm, who had died 3 years earlier. His son, Thomas, had been living in the woods nearby, watching the rental property and terrorizing guests for years. But here's the most terrifying part. When police went to arrest Thomas Grimm, they found his campsite, and in it, they discovered journals documenting his observations of dozens of previous renters, detailed notes about their daily routines, photos taken through windows, and plans. Detailed plans for what he called the final visit. Thomas Grimm was never found. Police believe he disappeared deeper into the Maine wilderness, but the rental company quietly stopped renting the house after Sarah's report. Sometimes, isolation isn't peaceful. Sometimes, it's exactly what predators are waiting for. In March 2022, the Hartwell family, parents Tom and Lisa, along with their teenage daughter Emma, rented a beach house in the Florida Keys for their spring break vacation. The house sat on stilts over the water, accessible only by a narrow wooden walkway. It seemed like the perfect tropical getaway. Crystal clear water, colorful fish swimming beneath the house, and complete privacy. But privacy can be a double-edged sword. On their second night, Emma woke up to a strange sound. A rhythmic tapping coming from underneath her bedroom floor. At first, she thought it might be something in the water, maybe debris hitting the house's support pillars. But the tapping had a pattern. 3 short taps, followed by 2 long ones, over and over again. Emma mentioned it to her parents at breakfast, but they hadn't heard anything. Tom suggested it was probably just the tide moving things around under the house. But that night, Lisa heard it too, and this time, it wasn't just tapping. There was splashing, as if someone was moving around in the water beneath their house. Tom grabbed a flashlight and went out onto the deck to investigate. The water was perfectly calm. No boats, no swimmers, nothing that could explain the sounds. But when he shined his flashlight down into the water, he saw something that made him stumble backward. dozens of footprints in the sandy bottom, all leading directly under their house. The next morning, Tom called the property manager to report the incident. The manager seemed nervous and asked if they had seen anyone in the water at night. "Why?" Tom asked. "Is that something we should be worried about?" What the manager told him next made Tom wish they had never come to the Keys. 3 months earlier, a man named David Cruz had gone missing from a nearby marina. His boat was found empty, drifting near the same waters where their rental house sat. But here's what made it terrifying. Security footage from the marina showed David Cruz diving off his boat in full scuba gear, and he was never seen surfacing. The Coast Guard had searched for weeks but never found his body. The case was eventually closed, presumed drowning. But what if David Cruz didn't drown? What if he was still down there, living underwater, watching the beach houses above? That night, the Hartwell family decided to leave early, but as they were packing, Emma made a discovery that confirmed their worst fears. In the storage closet under the stairs, she found a small waterproof container. Inside were photos. Dozens of photos taken from underwater, looking up at different beach houses. And the most recent photos were of their house. Pictures taken from directly below, showing their shadows moving around inside. But the most terrifying photo was one of Emma herself, taken through her bedroom window the night before. She was sleeping, completely unaware that someone was watching from the water below. The family called the police immediately. When divers searched the area, they found something that still makes headlines in the Florida Keys: an underwater camp, complete with air tanks, a makeshift shelter built into the coral reef, and supplies that could last for months. David Cruz was still alive, and he had been living underwater, watching beach house renters for over 3 months. When police finally caught him, Cruz claimed he had found peace underwater and didn't want to return to surface life. But the photos and detailed journals they found suggested something much darker. He had been planning to invite one of the families to join him underwater permanently. The Hartwell family never returned to the Florida Keys, and Emma still has nightmares about someone watching her sleep from the dark water below. Dr. Amanda Foster was looking forward to a quiet weekend at a beach house on the Oregon coast in September 2023. As a trauma surgeon, she rarely had time to relax, and this isolated rental seemed perfect for reading and unwinding. The house sat alone on a stretch of rocky coastline, surrounded by dense forest on 3 sides and the Pacific Ocean on the 4th. The nearest town was a 30-minute drive away. Amanda arrived on Friday evening and was immediately struck by how peaceful everything was. Just the sound of waves and wind through the trees. But peace can be deceiving. On Saturday morning, Amanda decided to explore the beach. As she walked along the shore, she noticed something odd. Fresh tire tracks in the sand, leading from the main road down to the beach and then back again. Someone had driven onto the beach recently, probably during the night, but there were no other houses nearby, and the tracks were too fresh to be from the rental company. That evening, Amanda was reading by the fireplace when she heard a car engine outside. She looked through the window but couldn't see any headlights. The engine idled for several minutes, then drove away. Amanda tried to convince herself it was probably just someone who had gotten lost and turned around. But at 2 a.m., she heard the engine again. This time, she crept to the window and peered out carefully. A dark pickup truck was parked at the end of the driveway. Engine running, headlights off. Amanda couldn't see the driver, but she could tell someone was sitting in the cab, watching the house. After about 10 minutes, the truck drove away. Amanda didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Sunday night was when things got truly terrifying. Amanda was getting ready for bed when she heard footsteps on the deck outside her bedroom. Slow, careful footsteps, as if someone was trying not to be heard. She grabbed her phone to call 911, but there was no cell service. The landline in the house had been disconnected. The footsteps stopped right outside her window. Amanda turned off all the lights and waited in the darkness. After what felt like hours, she heard the footsteps move away from the window and around to the front of the house. Then she heard something that made her blood freeze. The sound of a key turning in the front door lock. Someone had a key to the house. Amanda grabbed the biggest knife she could find from the kitchen and hid in the bedroom closet. She could hear someone moving around the house, opening and closing doors, as if they were searching for something or someone. The footsteps got closer to the bedroom. Amanda held her breath and gripped the knife tighter. The bedroom door opened. Through the slats in the closet door, Amanda could see a dark figure standing in the doorway. The person was wearing all black and had something in their hand that looked like rope. For 10 terrifying minutes, the figure searched the bedroom, under the bed, behind the curtains, getting closer and closer to the closet. Just as the figure reached for the closet door handle, Amanda heard something that saved her life. Car headlights swept across the bedroom window. The figure froze, then quickly left the room. Amanda heard the front door slam and the sound of someone running through the forest. The car in the driveway belonged to the property manager, who had come to check on a reported power outage in the area. When Amanda told him what had happened, he went pale and immediately called the police. What they discovered during the investigation was more terrifying than Amanda could have imagined. The beach house had been the site of 3 previous incidents involving single female renters. In each case, the women had reported feeling watched, finding signs that someone had been in the house, and seeing vehicles parked outside at night. But Amanda was the first one who had actually seen the intruder. Police found evidence that someone had been living in the forest behind the house for months. A hidden campsite with supplies, binoculars, and detailed notes about the house's rental schedule. Most disturbing of all, they found copies of house keys and detailed floor plans showing the best ways to enter undetected. The intruder was never caught, but the rental company quietly removed the property from their listings after Amanda's report. Some places are isolated for a reason, and sometimes that isolation is exactly what predators are counting on. These 5 stories share something in common that should terrify anyone who's ever stayed in a remote rental property. In each case, the victims thought they were alone. They thought they were safe. They thought a beautiful location meant a peaceful getaway. But as we've seen tonight, sometimes the most beautiful places hide the darkest secrets. Sometimes isolation isn't peace, it's vulnerability. And sometimes the people who know about these remote locations aren't the ones you want knowing where you sleep at night. The next time you book that perfect beach house getaway, remember these stories. Check the reviews carefully. Ask about the property's history, and trust your instincts. Because somewhere out there, in beach houses just like the ones in tonight's stories, new horrors are waiting to unfold. Sweet dreams. If these stories made your skin crawl, like the video. It tells the algorithm you survived. Subscribe and turn on the bell. We drop new nightmares regularly. Share with someone brave. And any Miles, NW10, or someone who thinks they are. Comment below. We want to know what you would have done. Some stories don't end when the lights come on. This is Dread Dynasty. We'll see you in the next scare.